Hey everyone, in this video we're going to take a look at Grammar Exercise 1 from Chapter 23 of the Road to Latin textbook. So like I always tell you, whenever you're dealing with Road to Latin, I'd always recommend you take a look at my website. You can find it on Nova Latin, right, the Road to Latin textbook, only because it adds a bunch of more resources for you, right? So if you're trying to learn it on your own, you can, of course. Road to Latin is an awesome textbook on its own. But if you want to just see it in a different way, grammar exercises, explanations, vocab, things like that, I'd always encourage you to take a look at my website. You can find Grammar Exercise 1 there. Along with this video, right, as the answer key. But before we dive too far into the actual grammar exercise, some things I always tell you want to do in advance is one, make sure again that you're really strong on the vocab for this chapter. The grammar exercises really do follow that pattern of taking the vocab and kind of using it for their questions. So make sure you go to the vocab and make sure that you've read through the grammar as well, right? At this point, you should have, but read through the explanation from the authors of Road to Latin, right? They have a great explanation there. If you're using my website, you can find my explanation with my notes, videos, things like that. But whatever it is, make sure you feel really comfortable with third declension nouns, which is what this grammar is all about. And then read the story, right? The actual stories in chapter 23 are designed to help you see the grammar and context and kind of understand how it all works and see it in like a story. So that would always be my recommendation, to do that. And then you should have a really strong grasp on whether or not you understand the grammar, right? If you can read the story, you're probably fine. These grammar exercises at the end are kind of the cherry on top, just to make sure that you're really good on the nuts and bolts. The story is more for seeing it in context. These exercises are more for like forming it, declining nouns, things like that. Translation, more sort of nuts and bolts type thing. Okay, so if you haven't done that yet, go back, do it, take a look at the textbook, whatever you have to do, and then take a look at the rest of this video, because we're going to start by walking through each of these questions and giving you the answers. It's just much more effective if you actually have done it yourself, and then you can compare your work against mine. Okay, so the first part of grammar exercise 1, it says decline the Latin expressions for the following, and you have five phrases here, or sorry, yeah, five phrases. There we go. You have Roman foot soldier, large foot, German chief, good law, and famous leader. And these nouns are all aimed for third declension nouns, right? That's what we're trying to do here, okay? So it's a way of just seeing and writing out third declension nouns and putting adjectives with it, okay? So the first one we have is Roman foot soldier. Now, the reason they wrote foot soldier is it's trying to get you to see the difference between just like the normal word for soldier, which would be miles, which is sort of like any soldier, and pedes, which is specifically the infantry, right, is really what it is. So a foot soldier is kind of the idea there. Now, I will say this is pedes, which means foot soldier, not pace, which means a foot. They look very, very similar, but they're not quite the same word, obviously, although they're related to each other. So just pay attention to that there. Okay, but pedes, a foot soldier, right? The word is pedis peditus, right? So the is in the genitive singular is giving this away as being a third declension noun, and it's masculine. So you take the word Roman, right, which is a first and second declension adjective, and you make it, you use it in its masculine form, right here, because it's a foot soldier. We'll keep it singular, and you'd have pedes Romanus, peditus Romani, pediti Romano, peditem Romanum, and pedite Romano. Okay, so your adjectives are going us, e, o, o, and the third declension noun is going blank, is, e, m, a, right? It's using the new endings that you saw this chapter, and it's totally fine that they do not have the exact same spelling. It's because you have a first and second declension adjective, Roman, going with a third declension noun, foot soldier, right? Totally fine, but these match in case, number, and gender, right? So it's totally good to go. Okay, and again, this is designed to get you to see your third declension noun endings, all right? The next one is large foot. So here we have pace, right? Not pedes, which is a infantryman, right? But pace is an actual foot, right? So it's the large foot. It's the word magnus, right? We're using the masculine form because it's talking about a foot, and the word foot is a third declension masculine noun. So you'd have pace magnus, pedis magni, pedi magno, pedem magnum, and pede magno, right? So again, the adjective is going us, e, o, o. Your third declension noun is going blank, is, e, m, a. And the way I need to spell this is, again, you just look for the genitive singular. The genitive singular of foot, pace, is pedis, right? P-E-D-I-S. So you drop the I-S ending and you add your others, and that's where I'm getting pedi, pedem, and pede. Okay? Now, for the third one, we have a German chief, which is a dux, right? Like a leader or a chief. Okay. Now, for this one, right, this is kind of related. You've seen princeps before, but we're going to stick with the actual word that comes from this chapter, just because it's a third declension noun, right? So with chief, leader, I finessed it a little bit just to show you some more third declension. But if you use dux, right, as your word for like a chief or a leader, the word German is Germanus, right? Just a first and second declension adjective. So it's Germanus, Germani, Germano, and down the line. Dux, right, as a third declension noun goes blank is ema. So you'd have dux, ducis, duci, ducem, duce, right? So this is where it gets important again for third declension nouns, that you look at the genitive. The genitive singular of dux is ducis, right? D-U-C-I-S. That's how I know that all these spellings of it start with D-U-C and not D-U-X, right? D-U-X is just the blank on our chart, okay? But a dux Germanus would be a German leader, okay? The next word we have is the good law. Now, the word law is lex, right? Lex is a law. It's where you get legal, because the genitive singular is legis, right? Leg. So again, this is where you have to pay attention when you have third declension nouns. Now, the only kind of odd trick here is that the word law in Latin, lex, is feminine. So you're going to use a feminine adjective. So when you use good, right, bona saum, we're going to use the feminine one, and that's where we get lex bona, legis boni, legi boni, legem bonum, and lege bona, right? And again, you have to add the macrons here. I didn't put all of them, but you get the idea, right? The adjective is going I, and the third declension noun is going blank, is, ema. And again, because these words are singular in the examples the book gave us, we're just going to keep them as singular. Okay? Now, the fifth one we have here is the famous leader. And again, this is where playing around with chief and leader, we're getting a little bit of a duplication, but it's fine. It's just good practice to work your way through. Again, you have dux, right? It's going to go with clarus because it's the word for famous. It's a first and second declension adjective. You're matching it with your noun. So you'd have a dux clarus, a ducus clari, a duci claro, a ducem clarum, and a duce claro, right? So you're just going blank, SEMA. So this first part of grammar exercise 1 is really good at just getting the repetition of how third declension noun endings work, right? And if you think of the chart, you're trying to memorize blank, SEMA, ibus, ibus, right? Those are the endings we're trying to use here. And it's really good when you match them up with an adjective, just so you can play around with adjective endings and see how they match in case, number, and gender, okay? So now we're on to the second part of grammar exercise 2. And this says give the nominative singular, the genitive singular, the gender, the nominative plural, and the genitive plural of the Latin nouns for the following, right? Or for the following Latin nouns is kind of the idea. So you have in English, courage, stone, triumph, shield, hostage, power, peace, horseman, spoils, law, foot, and king, okay? So a lot of these are third declension nouns. Not all of them, but a lot of them are. So we're just going to work our way through and practice writing them out, right? And again, part of the idea here is really the first three thereafter, the nominative singular, genitive singular, and gender. That's what you would see in a dictionary, which is why I'm assuming why they put them here. Putting the nominative plural and genitive plural, I'm honestly not entirely sure, but we'll go for it, right? It's just about learning endings. So the first word is courage, right? Which is virtus in Latin. So you'd have virtus, nominative singular, virtutis as the genitive singular. It's a feminine noun. The nominative plural, because it's a third declension noun, is virtutes with a long yes, and the genitive plural is virtutum, right? The is a genitive plural for third declension nouns. Next, you have stone, and again, if we follow our pattern, it would go lapis, lapidus, masculine, lapides, lapidum. Again, it's a third declension noun. It's a masculine one. No big deal. The third word we have here is triumph. Now, this is not a third declension noun. A triumph is a second declension noun. So we'll go triumphus, triumphi, and it's masculine, right? You can tell it's a second declension by the long I and the genitive singular, masculine noun. The plural, nominative plural, is triumphi, right? And the genitive plural is triumphorum, okay? The word for triumph. Good. The fourth word is shield. Now, this is scutum. Again, this is a second declension noun, but the difference here is this one's neuter, right? Shield. So you have scutum, scuti, neuter, and then the plural would be scuta for the nominative. Remember, when you're dealing with neuter nouns, becomes an A there. And then the genitive plural is scutorum, right? You're just following second declension noun endings, okay? Next, we have hostage. This is another third declension noun. It's obses, obsidis, right? Now, a hostage can technically be masculine or feminine, so you usually see it as m./f. in your dictionary. Doesn't really matter. But you'd have obses, obsidis, masculine/feminine, obsides, right, which is a really common word you see in sort of Latin historical writing, like Caesar, for instance. And then obsidum, right, would be the genitive plural. Again, third declension noun. Next, we have power, right, which in this chapter is auctoritas, right? And this one's a little tricky because the AS ending looks like it should be a first declension accusative plural. It's not. It's a third declension nominative singular, the blank in our chart. So it just happens to kind of look funny, but it's auctoritas and auctoritatis. It's the gender is feminine. It's a feminine noun. And the nominative plural will be auctoritates. And the genitive plural will be auctoritatum, right? You're just following your endings. Nothing too crazy there. Next, you have peace, which is pax, right? It's another third declension noun. So you have pax, pacus. There's the is and the gender singular. It's feminine, paces, and pacum would be your nominative plural and genitive plural. Next, you have horsemen, right? Cavalry is kind of the idea. But the singular is eques, right? That would be like a singular cavalryman running around the field. So it's eques equitis, right? There's the is making a third declension noun. It's masculine. Equites is the nominative plural. It's a really common word when you're looking through for like the cavalry of the Roman army, the equites. And then you have equitum, right? Again, just following your endings. Next, we have spoils, which is spolium. This is a second declension noun, but it's neuter, so it goes spolium, spoli, neuter. Spolia, which is a really common form, right? The plural, the spoils of war, right? Spolia and spoliorum, okay? Next, we have law, which is lex. Again, we've seen this word before. It's lex legis. It's feminine. Leges is the nominative plural, and legum would be the genitive plural. Next, we have foot, which is pes pedis, right? The pace is not pedes. That would be a foot soldier, but just a pace is your actual foot. So it's pes pedis. It's masculine. The nominative plural is pedes with a long es, and the genitive plural is pedum with the um. Again, just third declension nounings. Okay? And lastly, we have king, which is rex. It's rex regis. It's masculine. Reges would be the nominative plural, and regum would be the genitive plural. So this whole, again, section is really about you just looking up these words, getting used to seeing them, how they might show up in the dictionary. Again, I would assume that's why you have the nominative and genitive singular and the gender. That's how you'd find it in a dictionary. But it's really good practice just to think about endings, identifying what declension words belong to, and kind of going from there. So this brings us to the last part of grammar exercise 1, right? Part 3. And it says just supply the proper case endings, but I wanted to give you the translation too. I think it's easier to see when you're translating it, so you know kind of how these endings are working and why we picked it. But for number 1, you have scuta pedit blank erant magna, and I'm telling you here it's peditum. And the reason why is scuta are shields. Remember, scutum is a neuter noun, so the a is nominative plural. So you're saying the shields were large, scuta erant magna, right? That's our main idea. So what is pedit doing? The only thing that really makes sense is genitive plural, right? The shields of the infantry were large. And again, I made infantry plural because we're talking about shields plural, right? One guy wouldn't be running around with 10 different shields. So peditum makes the most sense here. The shields of the infantry were large. Okay? For number 2, you have pedit blank, ped blank, pugnant. And I'm telling you it should be pedites pedibus pugnant, right? A lot of alliteration there. But the pedites are the foot soldiers, the infantry. They fight. Now, pugnant is plural, so it has to be they are fighting. That's kind of where you can see pedites makes most sense as being your subject. If you went with ped, which is the word for foot, that would be kind of weird. The feet are fighting. That wouldn't really make a ton of sense. So you're saying the infantry are fighting, the foot soldiers are fighting on foot. Pedibus means like with their feet, but the best translation is on foot. Although, again, it would be kind of funny to have people kicking each other. Maybe they did. Who knows, right? I'll leave that up to you. But pedites pedibus probably makes the most sense here. For number 3, you have milit blank, lapid blank, saipe vulnerabantur. So you're saying, I think it would go milites lapidibus. And the reason why is because you have vulnerabantur, they were wounded, saipe often. So someone, plural, was often wounded, right? The subject probably wouldn't be stones, lapid, right? Because why would stones be wounded? But milit is from the word miles, which means soldiers. So if you make it plural, because you have a plural verb, you'd say milites vulnerabantur, right? The soldiers were often saipe wounded. That makes most sense. So now that you have that, the only thing left that would make sense for stone is by stones or with stones, right? Ablative plural. You could say with a stone, but again, if you have multiple soldiers getting hit by one stone, probably doesn't make a ton of sense. So you want to go plural. Milites lapidibus, the soldiers often were wounded by stones. Okay? Number 4, you have auctoritas romana, obsid blank non erat grata. So auctoritas is actually your subject there. That's the nominative singular of our word. It's a third declension noun. So you're saying the power, the authority, and it's romana, right? So Roman power was not pleasing, non erat grata, right? it wasn't very fun. And then you have obsid blank. So the thing that makes the most sense here is to go with dative, right? Because grata is one of our special adjectives that takes a dative. So you're saying Roman power was not pleasing to the hostages. I made it plural just because I figured there'd be more than one. If you want to make it one hostage, sure, have fun, right? Whatever kind of world you want to live in with this translation is good. But one way or another, it needs to be dative, right? You're looking for a third declension dative. Okay. Now you have number 5, so the second to last one. You have Duke blank, multos princip blank, Romam ducebant. So it's someone, ducebant, was leading, right? Or led, however you want to do it, to Rome, right? So someone is leading something or someone to Rome is kind of the idea. So now you have to piece out what we're going to do here. So multos is probably going with princip blank, right? So you can kind of assume that the subject is probably the duke, and it needs to be plural one way or another. So the leaders, the duques, led many chiefs. That would be multos principes, many chiefs to Rome, right? And again, you can kind of do it however you want. Doesn't really matter. I guess you could have tried to say that the leaders, or sorry, the chiefs led many leaders. It probably doesn't make the most sense given the word order. But again, they're third declension nouns. One needs to be nominative plural with an es, and again, because you have multos, many, your direct object is also plural, so accusative plural. So either way, they're both going to have an es ending, and then it's kind of up to you how you want to translate it. But I would say the best one is the leaders led many chiefs to Rome. Okay. And then you have the last one, number 6. You have nos leg blank, Romanos laudamus. So we praise, laudamus, we are praising. And nos is your subject, right? We are praising. It's redundant. You don't need it, but still, nos laudamus, we praise. Because the subject is we, the law cannot be the subject. We already have one. So it's going to be the direct object, the thing that's being praised. And it makes sense because you have Romanos there going with leg, which is accusative plural. So if Romanos is plural, it needs to be plural for laws too, right? Case, number, and gender. So we couldn't have Romanas, a plural adjective describing a singular noun. So it wouldn't be we praise the Roman law. It needs to be plural. It's going to be leges. It's a third declension noun. So when you put it together, again, nos leges Romanos laudamus. You're saying we praise or we are praising Roman laws. Okay. So again, chapter 23 is all about third declension nouns. It's a good chapter. There's a lot to it. It can be tricky. Third declension nouns are where my students tend to get a little bit confused. So use this as practice, right? Keep working right through, practice each one. If you have any questions at all, feel free to put them in the comments below. I'm always happy to help. But otherwise, if you can get through all these practice exercises and you can read the story without too much trouble, you're probably ready to move on. I would always suggest when you're dealing grammar, go to my website. At the very bottom under these grammar exercises, you'll find Magistrula exercises that are kind of tailored for this particular chapter. Do those, and that's how you know you're really on the right track. If you can do all that and you don't have any problem, you know you're ready to move on. Good luck.